Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Season 2 of Midday with Trey. I'm your host, Trey. Let's get right into the show. Today's episode is indeed the Season 2 finale. I don't know if I told you that yet, but it is the Season 2 finale. We wanted to have a very special guest. So for today's guest, we have the Mayor of Conway, South Carolina, Mayor Barbara Blain-Bellamy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Carl.
Yes, thank you so much for coming.
To be invited.
Yeah, so can we just start the show by just telling a little bit about yourself, just a brief background?
Okay, so brief, I don't even know how to do. When you've been around as long as I have, it's kind of sort of difficult to encapsulate all the time, but I'm a Conway native. And I was an Air Force brat, so I've lived a lot of other places, but Conway has always held my heart.
Right.
I attended Coastal Carolina University,
So, yeah.
and I'll say that I'm a graduate. At the time that I was a coastal student, it was still a part of the USC system. So I actually received an associate's degree from Coastal Carolina, but went on to the University of South Carolina to complete my undergraduate work. I have worked over the years as a social worker for about 25 years. I got a master's degree 20 years after my undergraduate degree. I was actually working on Coastal's campus. Coastal is the fiscal umbrella for the Area Agency on Aging, and I was director. During that time, I worked on campus, and I was in Kearns Hall, looked out of my window one day, and it just appeared to me that everybody who was walking around the campus was growing but me, that I had just sort of fallen into a lull, and that sort of prompted me to go back to school. When I was 2 months before my 47th birthday, I went to law school, and it was quite an interesting set of affairs, but I felt so driven to do that, just to had nothing to do with building a particular kind of name for myself, but it had to do with being able to serve the public, particularly the public that didn't regularly have access to legal advice.
Right.
I'd seen some instances in our family court where people just could not afford an attorney, and the opportunities are so slim to get anybody through some publicly funded organization. Went to law school, actually, to my own surprise, graduated after 2.5 years, passed the bar, and came back to Conway. And after even working for the city of Conway for 3 or 4 years as city deputy administrator, I opened a solo practice, and soon after ran for mayor.
All right.
And obviously I was successful.
Yes.
And which pleased me very much.
2 times now.
Yeah, this is the end of my second term.
Right.
This is actually year 8. So in November there will be another election, and the public will decide whether I'm good for them or whether they are ready to move on. And we'll see about that.
Right. Excellent. Okay. And so, how did you first get into politics? I guess you just kind of mentioned school and whatever. But
Sure.
Was there like an emotional pull to Conway, or
Well, and so you helped me along with answering that question. I'll be perfectly honest. I was coming out of a failed 18-year marriage. I didn't even live within the city limits. And when I did move back in, I found myself to not have a husband, not have children, sort of not have a cause. And I read in the local newspaper that there was an election coming up and that 3 seats on the Conway City Council were coming open. Had there been 1 seat, I don't know that I would have given it a thought, but there were 3. And I thought there may be some chance that somebody like me could pick up enough votes to claim one of those seats. And I was victorious.
Right.
And I was 40 years old. I know how that sounds to
No, it sounds
coastal
young. It sounds
students, but I was pretty youthful at 40 and learned so much about the makings of municipal government. So I've been around since, I think I was first elected in 1992. Starting my first term on city council in 1993, long before either of you was even born. But it was a good training, and just things sort of added up from there.
Right. Okay. And could you talk about some of your favorites and not least favorites, but what are your positives and negatives about just politics in general? Like, what do you enjoy the most, and what could you live without?
Right, exactly. So, people often say to me that I have a thankless job, and as it turns out, that has not been my experience. People are kind and gracious, at least when you're standing in front of them.
Right.
They compliment you. Even people who disagree with some of the choices that have been made and some of the projects that have come about are decent in their delivery. And we all have a right to disagree. That's why God gave each of us a brain. And what I find is even people who disagree with you aren't necessarily disagreeable. I can understand that there are different frames of mind, that there are different thinking mechanisms, that our own experiences that cause us to think a certain way are very different. And so that has been a plus.
Right.
There are troubling issues that come before the council, and like in a family and any other organization you're part of, and sometimes the answers aren't easy. Sometimes the choices appear to alienate people, appear to disregard people, and when that is the feeling that is gained out of a decision we make, I don't take that easily.
Right.
But generally, it's great fun. Maybe I like, sitting in the front row. Maybe I like the attention, and I'm just trying to be honest. But I just think that there's some serious work to be done.
Right.
And I think that the years that I've put in have taught me so much. And that doesn't disregard the fact that newcomers are very welcome here, very welcome to be a part of it, because I had to start learning somewhere as well. So 98% of the time, I am just so very happy about my role as mayor. And about 2% of the time, I wish I could have stayed home that day.
Okay, and I know for me, coming from Charlotte, North Carolina, as we talked about before, and Charleston, South Carolina, coming to Conway is a different feel from both of those. Conway has a small town vibe with a big city. We have Conway, Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, Stock City, all these different areas that kind of jumble into one.
Sure.
But as far as the city of Conway, I know I live in the city of Conway. I live like 2 minutes from here now.
Wonderful.
And I've felt a sense of community. We have a bunch of new restaurants coming up. Whitaker's, Hop and Witch, and we have all these cool different things and renovations that's going on right now.
Yes.
What is it to you about Conway that attracts people?
Well, I think it sort of begins with it being my native land. That certainly endears you to a place. I know the people. I've lived through so much of the history here that's a part of it. But I think you said it well. It is, in fact, that sense of community. If I have a single regret, it is that at some point in my youth, I wish that I had moved away alone to a city, doesn't really matter which one, just to prove to myself that I could have made a life for myself. But I always knew that if I went away for 2, 3, 4 years, that ultimately I would come back to Conway, South Carolina. People are kind and generous. People are helpful. People say hello. Doesn't help me that I know so many people when I go into the grocery store or the big box store. My sister says that she refuses to ever go with me in a store again because I tend to talk to everybody, and that is my style. That has nothing to do with me being the mayor. It may have helped me become the mayor,
Right.
but it's just my personality.
Yeah.
But I like. I don't necessarily like the climate,
Yeah.
but I like everything else about this place. And the growth is something that I embrace, something that I think the more amenities that come along, the better this place is for us. And if I have a dream, it is that we will ultimately become actually a college town.
Okay.
There's been a good bit of effort on our part to bring coastal students into the downtown of Conway, and we understand that people are drawn, if there's a draw to that this county,
Right.
as you described it. It is that magnificent Atlantic Ocean and everything that has to do with being in a tourist area. There are attractions that we will never be able to match.
Right.
However, if you want to have a good time with decent people, if you want to enjoy the tranquility of the black water, walk on my river. And we today have a mile-long river walk, but we have almost immediate plans to expand it. If you want to be in a place that's safe, and if you want to feel like the people around you are people that you would do well to come to know personally, then Conway is that place.
That's right. Okay, and can we talk about the significance of you being the first African American woman and person as a mayor in Conway, South Carolina? You know, as doing my research for this interview, I was reading, I was like, oh wow, I mean, it makes sense, but I just never thought about that in these positions of power in politics, or these positions of change. Even
Yes.
there's not many people who are of color or even women. So
Yes.
it's amazing that you are both
Yes.
in these positions. But did it come with any maybe stress or complication as you were running? I came across an old Instagram page of yours when you were running, actually, and all these old pictures of you handing out flyers to cars, standing at
Yes.
Whitmore Park Whitmore
Yes.
Park Middle School, handing out flyers. But it hasn't been posted since 2015. I was like, oh, I found this little archive. I thought it was very
Yes.
cool. So you were out in the streets, you were nitty gritty, you were with it.
I was
But I would,
not.
just wondering, like, is there any struggles that you had to overcome, during your electoral campaign?
Well, not as many as I expected,
Right.
I'm happy to say. And that's the thing about Conway. Now, I can't look inside somebody's brain or their heart, but I can say that I've been accepted generally with open arms. People are friendly towards me. They appear to be accepting of me. They invite me. They treat me kindly, and that's wonderful. I had some concern about whether or not I could be accepted with my skin color and my facial features and my hair texture. But I have to say that things have worked out well. I did receive a single death threat very early on, and while I was completely blown away by it, what I've learned is that that's not unusual at all. One of my friends is our solicitor, Jimmy Richardson, and he's one of the people I spoke to about that threat that was mailed to City Hall.
Right.
And he told me that he'd had several. And I think it just sort of comes along with the job. When I do my door-to-door knocks, I told a new candidate just the other night that I think there were 2 homes in the last election that I was literally sent away from. Neither of them was rude. One door, I wish I hadn't rung the bell the 3rd time. The cars were in the yard. Activity was going on inside. I could hear a television. I just wanted to make sure that I was heard. When the gentleman came to the door, he was pulling an oxygen tank behind him. And it appeared to be all he could do to make it to the door. And when he sent me away, I smiled and said, God bless you,
Right.
and went away. But only at one single home was a person, even to the extent of saying, I'm not interested, go away. I don't call that rudeness.
Right,
He
yeah.
has a right to not be bothered by a solicitation as I was giving, but for the most part, people invite me inside, offer me coffee, talk to me about the things that are interesting and important to them. So
Right.
it's been a really good ride.
That's amazing. Okay, and final question for this interview: do you have any advice for people who are want to get into maybe the local politics field, maybe even like your lawyer field, the law field in general, or just want to make change in their communities and even larger?
Yeah, I'd say that there's room for everybody. When we think about those things that make us passionate, those things that sort of define our purpose in life, I think that we have a responsibility to allow that to form a piece of our lives, take some of our time and our effort. And there's so many ways to be involved. One of them is by being on a city council or a city commission. I would just say that don't decide one day that you want to run for public office when you have not been involved already. It's important that people have a sense of who you are. It's not that necessarily that they have already determined who they want,
Right.
but to make yourself known in that community, to be involved. And when I say be involved, there are countless opportunities, organizations that deal with human need And I think once a person gets a stronghold into becoming a part of the solution, then they can sort of design a path that leads them. And in my own story, I knew that I wanted to work in a helpful profession, people-oriented profession. And when I was in high school, because I was black and because I was a girl, I was told that the only two things I could do after college would be to teach school or to be a nurse. Well, I have a propensity to shudder when I see blood, so nursing was not something I was interested in, and I decided that I would not teach. I was a sophomore at Coastal Carolina and had an opportunity to work as an intern with the local Department of Social Services. And it was that summer that I defined who I was and where I would work. And as I mentioned earlier, for 25 years, I didn't work. I involved myself and put my heart into trying to understand where people were and try to get them up to the next step. My legal career sort of happened the same way. Because I was in the family court and saw how many people needed legal assistance and how not available that was, it led me to the next step. So everybody's journey is different. There is no single recipe for getting to the place where you need to be. I was not able to predict any of this. It came as much a surprise to me as it did to anybody. But I think just careful steps, getting involved, making yourself a part of something that makes sense to you. I'm told that if you work in an arena that you love, that you never work. You just move through life feeling good and doing well. And if I've got like 10 more seconds, we all seek happiness in our lives, fulfillment in our lives. And I will go so far as to say that you will never be more fulfilled than you are when you are helping others. Some of our passion comes through getting ourselves a certain status, a certain amount of money. I drive a fancy little car. That's really important to a lot of people. But nothing is going to make your world, your life, more worthwhile to you, more fulfilling to you, than to extend your efforts towards others.
Now it's time for Hat of the Week. For this week's hat, I have this hat that says radically inclusive. And this hat comes from Biddy and Bob's, which is a coffee shop. Their slogan is, we're a coffee shop disguised as a human rights movement. And they hire people with mental and physical disabilities to teach them job training, life skills, and all that other good stuff. They have a place across the whole United States, but the one we went to was in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I went there a couple months ago, and I got the hat. That was really cool. That was a powerful message, and it was very cool to see a shop like that, especially that is nationwide. But it started in Wilmington, North Carolina. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, this has been an amazing season closer. Thank you so much. Mayor Barbara Blain-Bellamy, everybody. Thank you. Let's give it up. All right.